is a one-woman economic wrecking ball. And this November, the people of North Carolina are going to tell her we've had enough. We can't take it anymore. Kamala Harris, you're fired. Get out. You're fired. You did a lousy job as vice president.
6:38, Nashville's morning news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. No doubt how Donald Trump feels about Kamala Harris and the economic plan, the outline, if you will, that she announced yesterday. I want to welcome on into the program EJ Antoni. You've seen him on Fox. You also know that he's with the Heritage Foundation, our guest here on Nashville's morning news. And EJ, as an economist, let's just go through some of these things. A lot of what I saw yesterday, as far as Kamala Harris finally sort of giving, at the very least, I don't know, some detail as to what she wants to do economically if she is, voted president of the United States. Give me your overall outline of what you think, and then I'm going to maybe go into some more specifics.
Oh, goodness. It certainly feels like just more of the same. And, a good working definition of insanity is that you essentially do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. I see no reason why, if the government is spending, borrowing, and printing even more money, why we would not get even more inflation. I see no reason why, if we regulate and penalize industry more and more, why you would not get higher and higher prices and you would not exacerbate the current cost of living crisis.
One of the things that she said is, she's trying to compare her tax plans to Donald Trump's tax plans, what he's done in the past, of course. This is what she said.
Tax cuts for the billionaires and the top corporations in our country, and then not really paying much attention to middle-class families. My perspective on the economy is when you grow the middle class, America's economy is stronger. And there's empirical evidence to prove my point correct.
She keeps saying, EJ, that Trump's tax cuts did not help the middle class. Earlier in the program, I was talking about how they did some research in the first year that those tax cuts were available, and it did indeed help the middle class. They say the income bracket of $15,000 to $50,000, their taxes were cut by 26%. 50 to 100K, they got up to a 17% cut. In the $100,000 to $500,000 range, they saw their taxes cut by 13%. And Trump wants to, at the very least, extend his tax cuts, maybe even expand upon them. She wants to allow them to expire. So why is she continuously lying to the American people? Is she looking at different facts and figures that I'm looking at?
No, I think it's that she believes lying to the American people will be politically profitable. And since she's in the political game, that makes sense that she's taking that tact. Unfortunately, though, much like sound bites in general, her sound bites are not very sound. The rhetoric does not match reality here. As you just explained, Americans got a tax cut after the Trump tax reform was passed. In fact, the only group, ironically, who saw their taxes go up on average was high-income individuals in high-tax states. Now, I understand Tennessee doesn't have an income tax, but if you go to places like California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, in those locations, you pay a substantial portion of your income in state and local taxes. Well, by limiting state and local tax deductions on your federal return, what happened is you caused people in New York City, for example, high-income individuals, to literally pay millions of dollars more per person in federal income taxes. And so, as much as Harris likes to talk about Trump giving away tax cuts to the wealthy, in fact, it was exactly the opposite. They were the only group who ended up paying more.
I mean, I think it's just such a familiar talking point, right, with the Democrats. And, she did say this.
And I'm not mad at anybody for being rich, but they should pay their fair share.
So it's just, I feel like it's pandering. Because you and I both know that rich folks, I'm not rich, but I look at the facts and the figures. Rich people do pay a lot of money in taxes. And so, the more that she goes down this road, it's interesting that I don't see a lot of the fact checkers fact check the fact that, yes, the rich actually do pay 97.7% of all federal individual income taxes are paid for by the top 1%. But she keeps getting away with this narrative.
Yeah, I am so sick and tired of this talking point, quite frankly, and I'm sorry, but this is really a pet peeve of mine. Stop with the fair share garbage. The only reason they use weaselly words like that is because they don't want to put a number on it, because there is no limit to their greed. Please tell me, what is the fair amount of what I have earned that you deserve? The answer to that, frankly, is zero. But they say fair share because it sounds good, and because who could possibly be against fairness? And then no matter how much of your income they take, they can always take more in the name of fairness. But they refuse to put a percentage on that. They refuse to put a dollar amount on it, because there is no limit to their greed. They will never be satisfied no matter how much of your income they take.
One of the things she says is she's not going to raise taxes on anyone who makes under $400,000 a year. Biden said the same thing. When you look at how much we paid with inflation and all of those other things, I got to tell you, I'm having a hard time buying that particular, I'm going to air quote this, that particular promise that she won't raise taxes on people who make under $400,000 a year. Do you think that's, based on what you know about what she wants to do, is that a realistic promise that she would be able to keep?
No, not at all. And just like they were not able to keep it in their first term, I think a second term of these people, there would be another case of promises made, promises broken. Look, inflation is a tax. It is a transfer of wealth from you to the government. That is literally the definition of a tax. So, okay, there it is. It's a hidden tax, but still a tax. If you introduce more inflation into the economy, it will be a further taxation of those making less than $400,000. And by the way, inflation falls most heavily on people in the lower and middle income brackets. So again, it's a tax on those people. On top of that, though, the Biden-Harris administration has added about $1.7 trillion in additional regulatory costs to the economy, which again are borne disproportionately by people in the lower income brackets. So please explain to me again how you have not increased taxes on these folks. And actually there have been explicit tax increases as well that are passed on to these people, because in the IRA, for example, the Inflation Reduction Act, a terrible name for it. It should have been something like the Inflation Reacceleration Act, but I digress. That imposed additional taxes on a lot of American energy sources like coal, like oil, like natural gas, all of which get passed on to the consumer in the form of higher prices. And so that is also already baked into the cake. I fail to see how, in any way, they have not already increased taxes on low-income Americans, and their promises are simply more of the same. So we can expect more of the same result.
As far as, I mean, there's a lot here. We could talk about the corporate tax rate as well, but I want to talk about capital gains, because this is something that a lot of people are talking about. Perhaps a lot of people don't understand it. I want to get into this a little bit. She says that for those earning more than $1 million annually, Harris has proposed raising the long-term capital gains tax rate paid after selling assets like stocks from 28% to 28% from 20%. So in other words, you buy stocks, you sell those stocks, you make money, you're going to pay more money on those earnings. And she also wants to go after unrealized gains as well. So if you have a home, the example that I used earlier, if you bought a home that's $500,000 10 years ago, it's now worth $1 million. She wants to go after you if, even if you don't sell the house, just the concept of having more equity in your home, she wants to go after. Now, this is, I want to be clear, only for people making over $100 million. But is that the kind of thing where you're worried that once it gets into law that a slippery slope could happen and that could hit every American?
Well, that's exactly right, because this is precisely what they did with the income tax, where they introduced it as, oh, don't worry, this is just a tax on the super wealthy, the 1%ers. And then only a few years later, what happened? It was hitting every single American with punitively high rates. And so, this is a classic case of, as you said, the slippery slope, where they say we're only going to target the wealthy, and then sure enough, it ends up targeting everybody. That's particularly true in a kind of high inflationary environment like we have today, because you may think a home worth $1 million, oh, I'll never have a home worth $1 million. Hey, I can't tell you how many people right now are sitting on homes worth $500,000 who said, I'll never own a home that's worth that much. But because of inflation, because of the manipulation in interest rates that we've seen over the last 4 years, et cetera, you have seen home prices absolutely explode. This is a key reason why we are in right now a home ownership affordability crisis. And so essentially what has happened is inflation has done the dirty work for the politicians, where they have not had to adjust in statute how much people are going to pay based on certain amounts of income or certain amounts of wealth. They're allowing inflation to inflate all of those values for them. In other words, to push more and more Americans into these tax brackets. Now, federal income taxes are already adjusted for inflation. Those tax brackets are, but these new kinds of taxes that are being proposed would not be.
So there's a lot of giveaways here. $25,000 for the down payment of homes, $6,000 for the child care tax credit, $50,000 incentives for small businesses. I should say tax credits for small businesses, help with child care, although no real specifics. And, you know, even the woman that was interviewing her on MSNBC admitted that there really were no specifics on how this stuff is going to get paid for.
But how do you find that line to make sure corporations are paying their fair share, but they're not leaving our country?
Well, listen, I work with a lot of CEOs. I have spent a lot of time with CEOs, and I'm going to tell you that the business leaders who are actually part of the engine of America's economy agree that people should pay their fair share. They also agree that when we look at a plan such as mine that is about investing in the middle class, investing in new industries, investing in bringing down costs, invest in entrepreneurs like small businesses, that the overall economy is stronger and everyone benefits.
Right. But again, she didn't answer the question.
I do, but here's what's a little tricky. She doesn't answer the question around if the GOP is controlling the Senate. But how do you find that?
Yeah, how do you pay for it? What do you think, EJ?
You don't. She has no plan to pay for it. She has no plan for anything. I mean, my goodness. And by the way, I'll take things that never happened for 1,000, please. She talked to all these CEOs, and they all said, please, please tax us more. Please, we want to get a lower rate of return for our shareholders. You know, please, we want to get smaller bonuses, and we would all really like to lose our jobs. So please tax us more. Give me a break. Who on earth believes this garbage?
Well, and here's the thing, is that if you start going after the corporations, we all know that when Trump came in, he lowered the corporate tax rate. People got bonuses. Hiring started. People went from part-time to full-time. There are a lot of direct evidence that what Donald Trump did actually did improve the economy, because then you had people with more money in their pocket and they were spending more. So it's just, she, at least seems to me, she's the complete opposite of where Donald Trump wants to take this country. And I believe, EJ, that this is going to be, in 30 seconds or less, I'll get your wrap up. But I think this is going to be a major issue as people go to the polls in early voting now, because she's not really giving them anything that they can take to the polls and say, yeah, she's the one that's going to fix the last 3.5 years of financial disaster that I've been dealing with.
And if she's the one that's going to fix the last 3.5 years of financial disaster, why is she the one that caused the last 3.5 years of financial disaster in the first place? She keeps talking about how she's going to fix everything on day one. Day one was 3.5 years ago, sweetheart. What have you been doing in the meantime? And furthermore, you can't have it both ways. Either you can say that your record is strong and you've done a great job on the economy and everything's fine today, or you can say, oh my gosh, things are terrible and you need me to fix it. But how on earth can you reconcile the two of those at the same time? You can't.